How can listening to the community ruin a game? After all, the community is the one playing, right? Don't they know the game best? Well, let me explain. First off, most criticism comes from three places. Either people who are angry at something about the game and rage commenting, people who have genuine criticism for the game and have played it for a long time, or people who have just came into the game and are kind of not liking some things about it. I find that most criticism for games comes into these three categories. And while they can have some genuine criticism that developers should take into account, a lot of the time their criticism falls under the loud minority, where one little thing in a game can make a few players really upset, and those players will then go to Twitter and complain, or go to Reddit and complain. Whereas if you actually listen to the whole community as a whole, every single individual player, it's very, very unlikely that the majority would even have that opinion. This is where I find that listening to those set players, the loud minority, can actually harm a game a lot more than it can do good. Because majority of the time, these people who are complaining don't really even play the game that much. They're just upset about something in the game because it's not to their liking, and they go complain and then stop playing the game. This means that if the developers listen to these people, it might end up completely change the game for a demographic that doesn't even play the game. And this is where I believe the first issue comes in. However, there can be ways that you can listen to the community without having the loud minority issue. This being in-game surveys like Fortnite does, where it will randomly give you a little drop down and you will give your opinion on what just happened in the game. This is a very good way of getting genuine feedback from the players. However, there's also the dreaded feedback button. This, I feel, has the same exact issue that the loud minority does, where most players, if they feel bad about something, they're not going to go and click that feedback button. However, the people who want to complain will actively find ways to complain, being that feedback button. This is where, again, I think that survey really should be implemented in the majority of games. Like, just random surveys that take a little bit of the game and get people's opinions on it. This helps developers distinguish between the loud minority and actual criticism. I've also seen this implemented into Overwatch recently with the new hero Sierra. I can't remember exactly when it happened for me to get it, but I got a survey about the new hero, about all of their stats and stuff, and honestly, it helped a lot. Almost immediately after that survey, there was an update that addressed the majority of the issues in that survey, meaning that the Overwatch devs actually listened to the community, and it made a good change. So doesn't this go against what I'm saying in the video? Well, no, because even now you still hear people complaining about Sierra and complaining about how she's super overpowered when she's not, is she? Well, that's the issue. It's an opinion-based topic. Therefore, everyone's gonna have their own little variation of opinion on whether or not this hero or this character is broken or this gun is broken. And that's where I find that listening to the community can actually be harmful. Because if you listen to the players who are saying Sierra's overpowered, then you're not listening to the players who are saying she's in a good spot. And if you listen to the people saying she's in a good spot, you're not listening to the ones saying she's overpowered. Now, where's the mid-ground in between this? This is where I find every single game struggles. Because no matter what change you publish, you are going to upset someone. And this leads me into my next point. Change can be good, even if the loud minority dislikes it. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, a lot of the time, the loud minority is people who just come into the game and are complaining. However, there's also that group of people who have genuine passionate criticism. But then again, listening to the people who have genuine passionate criticism might also be harmful. And this is where I want to get into elitism. This is an idea that the higher rank players or the higher class players in some game, or even in real life, have more correct opinions or more correct takes than others. This, I believe, is what causes a majority of bad changes to games. Now, I'm pretty sure everyone's experienced this at least once in one of these games that they've played. Fortnite, Apex, Overwatch, any of these kind of games. It's where someone with a big following or a massive influence on the community of the game that they're choosing decides to make a decision for the developers and push that decision as if it should be in the game. In Apex, this was the push towards the faster playstyle. Faster movement abilities, more movement abilities, faster TTK of guns that do absurd amounts of damage, things like this, that sure, it increased the player count of the game, but it also completely shifted who was playing the game. And this leads back to the changes being good, even if people dislike it. Sure, Apex was one of my favorite games and now I don't like it, but obviously a lot more people like it than me. So yeah, it upset me, but the game is so much more healthy right now than it was before. And yeah, while it does suck having one of your favorite games be ruined, it's only ruined in your eyes. it brings a whole new wave of players that may have never decided to play the game into the game. And now these people might be diehard fans who end up playing even through these big changes. And that's where I find that change is necessary for games. However, there is times, again, where change can completely ruin a game. Take Fortnite, for example. Almost everybody agrees that this game was an extremely good game at the beginning. Even if you didn't like it, it was a well-made game. And now it's just lost all of that charm that it had before. Sure, people still like this game now, but it's not as niche as it was before. It doesn't fill the same gap that it did. It doesn't have that pizzazz. It's just a general game that people play because, oh, that's Fortnite. And this is where I wanted to mention streamers. And me being one of them, I've always tried to avoid this. Streamers have such big influence in games, and I find that a lot of the time this influence can end up harming the game a lot more than it helps. Take Apex, for example. During the time that I was playing the game, they were listening to streamers. They were listening to these massive communities that were watching the game. And the game sucked. It was in one of its arguably worst states ever because they were listening to these big streamers. They were listening to these massive amounts of communities that half the time didn't even end up playing the game. And this is one of the biggest points that I wanted to bring up, is that listening to these people who have these massive followings can cause very, very big issues with games. And hell, I'm in that boat too. I make content on a game that I love and I make passionate takes about this game. However, I do not want the game to be changed. It is in a great state right now. If it changes, yeah, I'll follow along with it. I'm not going to voice my concerns about the changes. I'm not going to say this change is bad, revert it, blah, 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 go spread hate to the developers, because that's just not good for a game. Yeah, I can say I dislike this update. I can say this sucked, but in the end, it's up to the developers what they want to do. If they want to make these changes, then they can. If they post a survey saying, hey, is this update good, and it gets bad feedback, they can act upon that and not upon what I'm saying. Because in the end, I'm not the developer of the game, so why do I have any say on what's changing in the game? And this is where I wanted to delve deeper into elitism, because this is what I feel truly ruins games. This is again the belief that someone at, say, a higher rank than you has a better opinion than you, or their opinion is more correct. This is what I feel like harms the games the most, because in the end, the people at top are a 1% of the community majority of the time. This means that if you're listening to them, you are not listening to the community, you are listening to, again, the loud minority. And yeah, you can pose the argument that the people at the top know what's better for the game because hell, they've played it longer, or they're better at the game so they know how it's truly meant to be played. But they're not the majority, so listening to them over the majority is going to make the majority upset. And this is where I feel most games die at. It's where they listen to the 1% at the top and cause the majority at the bottom to leave the game. You are creating a game that is niche, sure, and is very good for the people who like the game and can play it at a high skill, but then it separates it from the lower players. This is the hole that Apex fell into. It was catering to the high rank players, not listening to the low rank players, which caused the game to almost die at one point. But then they did something that, yeah, might have made me upset, but obviously made the game do way better than it did before. They stopped listening to the ranked players and started listening to the community that actually plays the game and wants to have fun. They balanced the game around fun rather than around competitiveness. And this is honestly what I think more games should strive for. And I think I know a way that they can do it without making the ranked players mad. And it's pretty simple. You separate ranked from quick play. You balance ranked on its own and make it more competitive and its own balance changes and all that, and then you give quick play as much fun as it can have. Because yeah, you don't want to ignore the top 1%, especially if a game has really good esports such as Overwatch, because then you're just kind of ruining the esports scene for that game. You want to balance esports or ranked away from quick play. That way people can still have fun without having to be as good as these esports champions. Because yeah, in Overwatch, there is this idea that you don't know how to play the game until you get to these high ranks, which is true because there's these fundamentals that you have to learn. There's a bunch of different intricacies and nuances that you have to learn before you actually know how to play the game fully. But wanting to know the game to that point just to have fun is dumb. You shouldn't have to learn a game to the point of mastering it and being a professional to be able to just enjoy the game. Which is where I feel the turn towards more competitive games has honestly ruined a lot of the games in general. I don't exactly know when this started or which game started it, but in my experience, it was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. At the beginning of this game's lifetime, games were played for fun, they were played for the giggles and stuff, you know? But during this game's lifespan, the gaming industry shifted towards more of a be the best mindset. And I think this happened around COVID, which makes sense because everyone was inside. You had a bunch of people trying to be the best at games. Which, you know, as a game developer, of course you're going to cater to the massive influx of players that you just got because that's just a smart way to go about it. However, once that massive influx leaves because they're going back to their jobs or they're going back to life, what do you do? As a game developer, what are you supposed to do when your player base that you balanced your game around leaves? And this is where most games are today. I think most games balance themselves around this big influx of players, and now they're struggling to keep themselves afloat because there's not this many players anymore. This is why you're seeing a massive amount of games die recently, like Highguard, Spectre Divide, Fragpunk, etc. These games that really could have been something when they had this influx of players, but now they're catering to an audience that doesn't exist anymore. And again, this is where Apex has done a good job. They stopped catering to this audience. They started catering to new players and making it more of an arcadey feel rather than feeling like you need to be the best just to be able to play the game and have fun. And honestly, I hope I see more games start heading towards this direction. But with that, I think I have covered everything I wanted to. If you enjoyed this video, I know it was a little bit different than usual. Make sure to like and subscribe, it'll help the algorithm know that this is what you guys want. And with that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day or night, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.